My friends, let's start with the truth. Being a woman with no friends doesn't mean you're unlovable. It doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. It doesn't mean you're broken, but it does mean something. It means you're craving more connection than you currently have. And that's a beautiful human thing. Feeling lonely is one of the most misunderstood emotional experiences a person can go through. For many women, the thought of being someone with no close friends carries a silent shame. There's a voice in the back of the mind that whispers, maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm the problem. But that voice is wrong. Loneliness is not a flaw. It's not a character defect. It's a signal. Just like hunger tells you that your body needs food, loneliness tells you that your emotional self needs connection. It's a natural and important message from your inner world. Yet we often misread that message. Instead of hearing, you deserve meaningful connection, we hear, you're not good enough to have it. That's when the downward spiral begins. We withdraw more. We convince ourselves that people don't really want to connect with us. And as we isolate further, the loneliness deepens. Not because there's something inherently wrong, but because we've turned away from the very thing we need. Feeling lonely doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. It means something important inside of you is working exactly as it should. You want connection. You need to be seen. That is not weakness. That is humanity. Every woman, no matter how independent, successful, or self-sufficient, has a core longing to be understood, to have someone who truly gets her. That longing doesn't make you needy. It makes you real. Let's look at this in a more empowering way. What if your loneliness was actually a sign of your emotional intelligence? What if it was your internal compass trying to guide you back to belonging? That completely changes the narrative. Instead of punishing yourself for being lonely, you can start listening to it. You can ask, what is this feeling trying to tell me? What am I missing that matters to me? It's not just about having people around, it's about having people who see you. You could be in a room full of acquaintances and still feel invisible. Loneliness doesn't always come from physical isolation. It comes from emotional disconnection. That's why the solution isn't just to get out more or make small talk. It's to start building meaningful connection, the kind where you feel safe being your full self without performance. The first step is to remove the judgment. Stop telling yourself that your loneliness makes you weak or unwanted. In reality, that feeling could be the very thing that awakens you to what matters most. It could be the start of a turning point. Because when you stop viewing loneliness as failure, you can start viewing it as feedback. You can start asking better questions. Where have I stopped showing up as myself? Where have I settled for shallow connections? What kind of people do I actually want in my life? How can I create space to invite them in? And you look at loneliness as a teacher instead of a sentence, you start moving forward. You begin to treat your emotional needs with the same care and intentionality that you would give to your physical health. You realize connection isn't optional, it's vital. And here's something else most people don't tell you. The people who appear the most connected aren't always the most fulfilled. Many are surrounded by others but still feel unseen. What separates the fulfilled from the lonely isn't how many people they know, it's how deeply they connect. You don't need a crowd, you need alignment. And once you understand that, you stop chasing quantity and start building quality. So if you're feeling like a woman with no friends, remember this. It's not a permanent identity. It's a current experience. And that experience is a signal, a gentle, persistent nudge from your inner self that says you were made for more than disconnection. Let that signal move you, not into shame, but into action. Because once you stop treating loneliness like a weakness, you can finally treat connection like the strength it truly is. When we think about friendship, we're often influenced by what we see on the surface. Big groups, loud laughter, constant social plans, matching outfits, inside jokes. In this culture, there's almost an unspoken message. The more friends you have, the more valuable you are. But that idea is not only misleading, it's damaging because it tells women that if they're not surrounded by a large group, they're somehow failing at friendship. The truth is far more empowering. Friendship is not about quantity, it's about alignment. Having a large number of people around you means very little if you can't be your true self with any of them. You could have 10 people in your contacts list, be invited to parties, have people tag you in photos, and still feel completely alone. Because deep down, it's not about being around people, it's about feeling known, feeling safe, feeling understood. A person who truly gets you, who shows up when it matters, who listens without judgment, is worth more than 100 people who only see the version of you that performs well on the surface. Many women fall into the trap of people collecting. They try to make themselves likable to everyone. They blend in, adapt, stay agreeable, because they believe that the more people who accept them, the more secure they'll feel. But that's a trap, because the more you try to fit in everywhere, the more you lose yourself. You trade authenticity for approval, and the friendships you build from that place may keep you busy, but they rarely leave you fulfilled. 9 friendships start when you show up as who you really are, not who you think people want you to be, not the curated version you post online, but the raw, honest, imperfect version of yourself, the one with dreams, doubts, quirks, and flaws. That version is the one capable of attracting real connection, because people don't bond with perfection, they bond with truth. When you have the courage to be yourself, you make space for the right people to come in. The people who aren't just nearby, but in sync with you. There's another layer to this. Sometimes we hold on to old friendships because of history, not alignment. You might have people in your life simply because they've always been there. But if you're growing and they're not, or if you're moving in a different direction, it's okay to acknowledge that not all friendships are meant to last forever. Outgrowing people doesn't make you a bad friend. It means you're evolving. And evolving friendships require more than shared memories. They require shared values. It's important to ask yourself, do the people in my life reflect who I am or just who I used to be? That one question can reveal so much, because aligned friendships are about mutual nourishment, about both people giving, growing, and challenging each other in healthy ways. It's not about constant agreement or forced harmony. It's about a shared rhythm, one where you feel energized, not drained after spending time together. And here's the beautiful thing. When you stop chasing volume and start seeking alignment, your entire experience of friendship changes. You stop tolerating disrespect. You stop over-explaining your worth. You stop shrinking yourself to maintain connection. Instead, you raise your standard. You look for people who feel easy to be around, not because they're always fun or positive, but because they let you breathe. They make room for your full humanity, and you do the same for them. This shift isn't always quick. Sometimes it requires you to sit in a season of solitude, a space where you're no longer entertaining the wrong people, but haven't yet found the right ones. That space can feel lonely, but it's sacred, because in that space, you're aligning with yourself. You're clarifying what you want, what you deserve, and what you're no longer willing to settle for. And when you come from that place, when you've found alignment within, you naturally attract people who resonate with the real you. People who see you not as a role to be played, but as a person to be known. So remember, friendship isn't about how many people know your name. It's about how deeply 1 or 2 people know your heart. Choose alignment. Choose real. That's where true connection begins. The relationship you have with yourself is the foundation for every relationship you'll have with others. It's often said, you teach people how to treat you, and that teaching begins with how you see and treat yourself. When you don't value yourself, you unconsciously send signals to others that say, I'm not worthy of being valued. But when you recognize your own worth, when you truly believe you are enough, you set the tone for deeper, more respectful, and more aligned relationships. Self-worth always comes before social worth. Many women carry invisible stories that shape how they show up in the world. Stories from childhood, past friendships, breakups, or betrayals. Stories that sound like, I'm too much, I'm not enough, people leave, or I always end up on the outside. These beliefs don't just stay in your mind. They shape your behavior. They make you shrink. They make you settle. They make you tolerate surface level connections because deep down, you don't fully believe you deserve more. This is where the shift begins. You have to start viewing yourself the way someone who loves you would, not in a superficial or idealized way, but in a compassionate, realistic, and respectful way. That means honoring your own needs, acknowledging your own strengths, noticing the small wins, speaking to yourself with kindness, especially on the days you feel invisible or left out. Self-worth isn't about thinking you're better than others. It's about understanding that you don't have to be anyone else to be valuable. You don't have to be the loudest in the room, the most interesting, the most successful, or the most agreeable to be worthy of love and friendship. You simply have to be you fully and consistently. The people who matter will connect with that version of you. But if you only ever show the edited, polished version, you'll never know who truly belongs in your life and who's just clapping for the performance. When a woman lacks self-worth, it often shows up in subtle, socially acceptable ways. She's the one who over-apologizes, who doesn't speak up when her boundaries are crossed, who laughs at jokes that hurt her feelings just to keep the peace, who shows up for others but never asks for anything in return. On the outside, she might seem low maintenance or easygoing, but inside she feels exhausted, misunderstood, unseen. The tragedy is that this pattern can go on for years, and the world often rewards it. People might praise her for being so chill or never making things about herself, but the truth is, every time she puts her needs last, she tells herself she doesn't matter. And over time, that becomes a silent belief that she carries into every friendship, every relationship, every room she walks into. Reclaiming your self-worth isn't a loud act. It's not about making declarations or demanding attention. It's about the quiet choices you make every day. Choosing to walk away from conversations that belittle you. Choosing to say no when something doesn't feel right. Choosing to stop chasing people who only offer breadcrumbs of attention. Choosing to rest, to speak, to exist unapologetically. And when you begin to show up from a place of self-worth, everything changes. You no longer cling to people just to feel included. You no longer ignore red flags just to avoid being alone. You become less reactive and more intentional. You start to ask not, do they like me, but do they align with me? That one shift makes all the difference. People will mirror your relationship with yourself. If you carry yourself like someone who deserves respect, care, and honesty, the right people will respond in kind. And the wrong ones? They'll fall away, not because you pushed them out, but because they no longer recognize the version of you who tolerated. So if you're a woman struggling to find meaningful friendships, don't start by looking outward. Start inward. Ask yourself, how do I treat me? Because that's where it all begins. The deeper your self-worth, the stronger your filter becomes. You won't let just anyone in. And that's not selfish. That's self-protective. That's wise. That's powerful. And most of all, that's the beginning of real connection. Not just with others, but with the version of you who finally believes she's enough. It's easy to believe you're the only one going through it. When you're sitting at home on a Friday night with no one to call when your phone stays silent while others seem to be constantly chatting or making plans, it can feel like you're the outlier, like everyone else has their circle, their people, their place. But here's the truth most people don't talk about. You are not the only one who feels alone. In fact, loneliness is one of the most common and most hidden emotional experiences, especially for women. There are thousands of women walking through life feeling exactly the same way you do, like they don't quite belong anywhere, like they're always on the outside looking in, like they're invisible even in crowded rooms. And what makes that experience even harder is the silence around it. no one wants to admit they're lonely. Because somewhere along the way, we started equating loneliness with failure. We started treating it like a personal flaw rather than the very human experience it is. The silence creates a dangerous illusion, one where everyone else seems connected, fulfilled, supported. You scroll through pictures of brunches and birthday dinners and girls' trips, and it paints a story of perfect friendships that most of the time isn't even real. Social media amplifies the highlights, but hides the loneliness behind the filters. You see smiles and captions filled with inside jokes, but you don't see the quiet ache that so many people are carrying behind those posts. You don't see the women crying in their cars after pretending to be okay all day. You don't see the ones who stayed home because they had no one to go out with. You don't see the ones who feel completely alone in their marriages, in their jobs, in their daily routines. And because no one is talking about it, everyone thinks they're the only one. Everyone thinks they're the exception, when in reality, they're the rule. You are not the only woman feeling this way. In fact, the moment you open up about it, really open up, you'll be shocked by how many people say, "Me too." Loneliness doesn't discriminate. It doesn't care how beautiful you are, how successful you are, how smart or funny or kind. It's not something you earn your way out of. It's something that all of us experience when our need for meaningful connection isn't being met. And here's the thing, feeling lonely doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're wired for connection. You're not broken. That feeling of isolation grows, not because there are no people around, but because there's no real connection happening. You might be surrounded by coworkers, neighbors, or casual acquaintances, but if you don't feel truly seen or understood by anyone, you'll still feel alone. Emotional isolation is just as painful as physical isolation, and often much harder to talk about. But awareness is the first step to change. Once you realize you're not alone in feeling alone, you can stop shaming yourself for it. You can start speaking about it, even gently. Maybe you reach out to someone you used to know and say, "I've been craving deeper connection lately, want to grab a coffee?" Maybe you join a group or class, not just to stay busy, but with the intention of finding like-minded people. Maybe you start being more honest in conversations, letting people see the parts of you that you usually keep guarded. Those people are waiting for someone else to go first, someone else to open the door to realness, to vulnerability, to truth. And when you're the one who goes first, even if it's scary, you become the invitation for deeper connection. You become the reminder that none of us have to do this alone. There's power in naming what you're going through. There's healing in realizing you're not the only one. And there's strength in allowing yourself to be seen in your loneliness. Because that's what starts to break the silence, not just for you, but for everyone else who's been waiting for someone to speak up. You are not alone in feeling alone. And the moment you stop hiding your loneliness is the moment you start creating space for true connection. The kind that doesn't just look good on the outside, but actually nourishes you from the inside out. One of the hardest truths to accept is that building deep, meaningful friendships doesn't happen by accident. It requires intention, effort, and a willingness to step into discomfort. For many women who feel like they have no friends, it's not because they're unlovable or unworthy. It's because they've been waiting for connection to find them instead of reaching out to create it. And that's where the shift begins. If you want connection, you have to be willing to be the one who initiates it. We live in a world that often tells us friendship should be effortless, that the right people will just show up, that we'll magically click with someone and a lifelong bond will form overnight. But real friendships don't usually work that way. They're not lightning strikes. They're slow burns. They grow through shared experiences, vulnerability, consistency, and time. And someone has to start that process. Someone has to take the first step. If you keep waiting for other people to make the move, you might wait forever. Sometimes you have to go first. That might mean sending the text, making the invitation, asking someone to grab coffee, saying, "Hey, I really enjoyed talking to you. Want to hang out sometime? And yes, that can feel terrifying. Reaching out makes you vulnerable. It opens the door to possible rejection, but it also opens the door to connection. And you can't build meaningful relationships without that kind of risk. Here's the deeper truth. Most people are just as nervous as you are. Most people are also craving deeper relationships, but don't know how to initiate them. Everyone is afraid of being the one who cares more, tries harder, or gets turned down. But the people who end up with rich, fulfilling friendships are the ones who care anyway, who try anyway, who risk the awkwardness because they understand something important. Real connection doesn't come from being cool. It comes from being courageous. And once you start those conversations, the goal is not to be perfect. It's not to impress. It's to be real, to be warm, open, and present. Most people aren't looking for someone flawless. They're looking for someone they can feel safe around. Someone who listens, someone who asks questions, someone who remembers little things. That kind of presence is rare and powerful. But being intentional also means following up. One of the biggest reasons friendships don't deepen is because we meet someone we click with and then do nothing. We tell ourselves if they really wanted to talk again, they'd reach out. But what if they're thinking the same thing? If both people are waiting, nothing happens. Don't let fear of appearing too eager stop you from nurturing a connection that could grow into something real. It's also important to understand that initiating doesn't mean forcing. You're not chasing people or trying to win anyone over. You're offering connection. You're showing interest. And if the energy isn't reciprocated, if someone repeatedly makes excuses, avoids connection, or gives you the feeling that you're doing all the work, it's okay to let that go. Being intentional is about seeking alignment, not about convincing someone to value you. The more you practice initiating connection, the easier it gets. You stop taking silence personally. You stop seeing rejection as a statement about your worth and start seeing it as simple misalignment. And with every step, you build not just friendships, but confidence, self-trust, and emotional resilience. So if you're a woman feeling alone, the most powerful thing you can do is take ownership of your need for connection and begin to act on it. Don't wait for the world to find you. Go out and find your people. Be brave enough to go first. Because when you initiate from a place of authenticity and self-respect, you stop hoping for connection and start creating it. So if you've ever looked around and wondered why you don't have the friendships others seem to enjoy so easily, if you've ever felt like the woman with no friends, know this: your story isn't over. This moment, this feeling, it's not permanent. It's not proof that you're broken or that something is wrong with you. It's simply a pause, a place of reflection, a space that's calling you back to yourself. Friendship isn't about numbers. It's not about filling every weekend or fitting into every group. It's about quality. It's about alignment. It's about creating space in your life for people who see you, really see you, and choosing not to settle for anything less. But that connection you crave, it starts with you, with the relationship you build with yourself, with how you speak to yourself, how you honor your own needs, how you show up in the world even when it feels vulnerable. The moment you begin treating yourself like someone worth knowing, the world responds. People respond, but it's not instant. It takes intention, it takes bravery, it takes time. There will be seasons when it feels like no one understands, and that's okay. That doesn't mean you're alone forever. It means you're in the middle of building something real, and real things take time. In those seasons, instead of retreating into shame or silence, choose to lean into truth. Reach out, go first, say what you're really feeling. Not everyone will meet you there, but the right ones will.